Good morning, County Council. The weather has cooperated. Here we all are, ready to have our special meeting today. At this point in time, as you're able, please join us in the singing and standing for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you please conduct a roll call? Councillor Mackey.
Present.
Councillor McKay. Councillor Carlton.
Present.
Councillor Pringle. Councillor McQueen. Councillor Nielsen. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Dickert.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Kentner. Councillor Keaveney. Councillor Body. Councillor Gregg will be joining us later this morning. Councillor Milne. Councillor Debreen. Warden Matrosovs. Councillor Bourdignon.
Present.
Councillor Eccles. Councillor Tom Hutchison sends his regrets today. Alternate Councillor Doug Hutchinson. So we have all members in attendance today with the exception of Councillors Tom Hutchison and Scott Gregg. Okay, thank you very much. Let us begin as we acknowledge with respect that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires, known as the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. We give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, collectively known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, traditional keepers of these lands and waters since time immemorial. In our south lies the traditional territories of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Haudenosaunee. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and friendship with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. At this point in time, as we enter into our budget agenda today, I will ask if there are any declarations of interest. Seeing no hands raised in the chamber or online, we will continue. And we have an itinerary today. We are going to be walked through our slides 1 through 41 at various different points from different leadership from our staff. And what we'll do is, please, CAO Schertzer is on his way to the lectern to introduce what we'll be doing. We are going to aim for having our break at 11:10. So I'm just saying that right now, so you can all poke me if I forget when we get to 11:10. But we do have quite a full agenda, so we're expecting that lunch will be a little later after that in order to be able to make sure that we visit all of the sections that we need to contemplate. So with that, welcome. Good morning, CAO Schertzer, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs, and good morning, Council. So today's staff will present an overview of Grey County's 2026 draft budget and the projected 2027 budget. We will identify the process undertaken to develop this draft budget and some of the key highlights that reflect our commitments to Council's direction and strategic priorities. The journey to this draft budget has been a collaborative effort. Staff began with multi-year planning, leveraging new budgeting software, and holding a series of meetings with various financial analysts, some managers and directors from earlier this year right through to September. These sessions focus on refining departmental budgets, identifying savings, and prioritizing initiatives. We have had several budget discussions with the Budget and Finance Committee, identifying some of the budget pressures and the FTE requests in September, presenting the highlights of the capital budget in October, and presenting the operating budget highlights in November. We will highlight the items of the Budget and Finance Committee that have recommended to Council to explore further, and also identify some further potential budget reduction opportunities based on the direction and the discussion from the Budget and Finance Committee. This draft budget is based on the strategic priorities identified in the corporate strategic plan, as well as other strategic guiding documents such as the Asset Management Plan, County Official Plan, and the Economic Development, Tourism, and Culture Master Plan. The draft budget builds off of the 2026 projected budget that was identified as part of last year's budget process. The draft budget will help the county to continue to advance strategic priorities in a number of areas, including asset management and infrastructure to continue to make our roads, buildings, and infrastructure maintained. Continued investments into housing and community services to support the needs of our most vulnerable residents, aligning with the county's strategic goal of giving everyone a place to call home. Continuing to invest and enhance the services provided by our paramedics to ensure we are meeting the needs of our growing communities and changing demographics. Maintaining and enhancing the exceptional quality of care provided by our long-term care staff, allowing them to continue to color it for the residents. Continue to support for regional marketing, investment readiness, and implementation of master plan priorities, including the Gather campaign and enhanced data access for municipalities. Continue to move forward with Going Green and Gray projects that will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but will result in our buildings, facilities, and fleet being more energy efficient, resulting in future cost savings, as well as ensuring our infrastructure and communities are more resilient to our changing climate. Continued investments and enhancements in our corporate services departments who provide support to County Council, as well as frontline and public-facing services. Funding to support staff and workforce development, including skills development, succession planning, and diversity initiatives, as outlined in our strategic plan. Investments in technology, communications, and process improvements to enhance service quality and efficiency. These are just a few of the highlights in the draft budget, and staff will provide further highlights as they go through their presentations of their budgets today, as well as next week. In response to direction and recent discussions at the Budget and Finance Committee, staff have conducted a detailed review of reserves and surpluses over the past couple of years. We are proposing several budget reduction opportunities, which could lower the overall net levy increase, which currently stands at 6.68% to below 5.5%. These reductions have been carefully considered to minimize impact on service levels and future budgets. So over the next two budget meetings, staff will highlight major assumptions and impacts that have shaped both the 2026 draft budget and the 2027 projected budget. Staff will summarize budget reductions made prior to today, as well as the inclusion of prior year council initiatives and changes from the prior year projections and their impact on the overall budget. We'll provide comparisons between the 2025 budget, the 2026 projections, and the current draft budget. Departments will also present the highlights of their operating and capital budgets using the PDF version of the draft budget document, which was included in the agenda package. Staff are looking for any recommendations and directions from council on whether there is comfort in the overall budget numbers based on what you hear today. If not, staff are interested in any thoughts on a preferred overall net levy target, as well as any recommendations on what areas you would suggest staff explore further for any further budget reduction opportunities. This way we can explore those further in detail and bring those back for council's consideration on the December 12th meeting. Staff will track and review any suggestions for budget changes with the opportunity for council to consider those changes and pass a motion at the end of the budget presentation next week. Let's see how many times we say budget. Any questions that cannot be answered immediately will be followed up over the course of the two budget meetings. Again, we look forward to the feedback and direction as we work together to finalize a budget that supports Grey County's strategic vision and delivers value to our communities. That's my opening remarks. If there's any questions, I will turn it over to Sue and she will go through the initial presentation.
Okay, well, just put a call out if there are any questions, but I think we're going to need to move on into the next section before those questions start. Not seeing any hands, please continue.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Warden. Morning, everyone. Happy to be back at the podium again with some more budget days. This is a one Christmas present to us all today, so let's enjoy today. So the first slide I have for you today is basically a pictogram of the events that Randy just described on how we got from last year into today. And over the course of a couple of my slides, you will see we kind of go back in the past and into the future. But we started last year was the first year we actually had a current year budget and a next year projection. And then in the spring this year, we implemented our budgeting software. So that has allowed us to present the documents you'll see today, mainly an online version with the PDF capabilities. So it still needs a bit of work in my eyes, and I think there's a few things I'd like to change going forward, but there's always room for improvements. As Randy said, we've had a lot of meetings over the summer between staff and our financial analysts, managers, directors. We've spent a lot of time discussing how we do things and can we do them better, and it's led us to today. I'm just going to give you right now an overview of some of the major assumptions that have impacted our budgets this year. One of those is obviously we always have, due to the services that we provide, a lot of it is grant funded from the federal and provincial governments. And a lot of times we don't know exactly what our base funding could be or will be. So we do make assumptions based on, if we don't know what it is, we're going to assume that it's the same as last year. We also have inflationary increases that impact not only from a CPI level, but also from the non-residential consumer price index, especially around the services we provide around and there's a slide later on that I've given you a sort of a history of the inflation and our BCI, just to sort of give you an idea of what those numbers are and how they're affecting us. We also have cost of living increases for our non-union and collective agreements. Obviously, if we have current collective agreements, we will know. And in the instances where we have outstanding collective agreements, we do make estimates on what those increases will be over time. Our current benefits rates renew every April 1st. So we know exactly what the costs are till April 1st of 2026. And then we are projecting an estimated increase or changes after that. And typically we discuss with HR and our benefit. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We just need to do a restart on the materials that people are following along with the visuals. So if you want to just take a moment, grab a glass of water, and then we'll continue. Sorry, I didn't want to have to interrupt your flow. Okay, we're almost there just for people following along. Just give us a moment. We're gonna use an alternate electronic conduit to make sure people can access what they need to follow along. Okay, so we've got it on the screen. Everybody's got it on their screens. I'm just gonna look to see if we've got a thumbs up from our technology. They've got the cabinet open, so I know I need to wait. Okay, good. We've got the okay. So please, thank you very much. Sorry for that interruption. If you could please continue. Thanks.
Thank you. As I was saying, our benefit rates are known until March 31st, 2026. And then after that point, we have made assumptions based on discussions with our benefit brokers. If we just, next slide, please. Oh, I'm doing, okay. So this slide that you see is just to sort of highlight the impacts that we've seen in inflation and the NRCBA rates over the last few years. As you can see, the third quarter for the non-residential building construction rate was a 4.21 increase over the prior period last year. So if I wanted to put that in context to our capital budgets, our overall expenditures in our capital budgets are about 115 million. And if I take out sort of the transfers to reserves, it leaves us about 100 million. So you add 4.2%, it's going to bring you it's going to bring you just over $4 million of an increase if we just do some really rough calculations. On the next slide, we just wanted to highlight what we have included and what's not included in the current budget you see before you. As Randy had mentioned, there were staffing requests that were presented to the Budget and Finance Committee in September that were approved to be included in this year's budget. There are detailed in the front of your budget package online, and in the PDF, you will have a sheet for each staffing request with details on that. And I do have the list on the next slide, but we'll do that next. We have included the road exchange impacts that were presented to the Urban Road and Road Exchange Task Force this year. And Rockwood redevelopment is included in the budget with an estimated Q1 2027 opening date. What we haven't included in the budget for you this year is discussions that we've been having between you and the lower tiers on planning efficiencies. And there were recommendations on the November 13th Committee of the Whole to defer the Ayton paramedic base. That is not included in this budget, and neither are recommendations or to bring forward from the November 26th, 2025 Budget and Finance Committee. The list you see before you were positions that were presented to the Budget and Finance Committee in September. These positions are included in this year's budget. do have a start date of April 1st. So they do have a delayed start date for 2026. And the 2027 positions that are new also have a delayed start date. I won't go into those in details. I'll let individual departments speak to those more in detail. We do have what I'm calling a service level change with Rockwood redevelopment, because it is well underway right now. And we, in the 2026 budget, we have assumed that all expenditures that were likely to occur before opening are going to be funded through one-time funding. And we have estimated that cost to be approximately $800,000. And then in the 2027 budget, you will see that we are estimating that the start of the beds and the reopening will be in the first quarter. We are estimating those additional 28 beds will be about 3.16 million in gross expenditures, which is funded through a combination of one-time funding, county level and provincial funding, with an overall net levy increase in 2027 of 452,200. Now, I had mentioned on a previous slide that one of the recommendations was to defer a capital project. And I just thought we'd go over sort of what we did when we do that or defer a project. So when we looked at deferring the Ayton Beach, I'm thinking the summertime and maybe I want to be at a beach, but not quite there, the Ayton base, pardon me. And so we sort of look at, if we go forward a year, what is the cost of that build going to be if we do it a year from now? Chances are what we thought it would happen in this year is not going to be. It's probably going to cost us some more money. And so we looked at, were there other bases that we were already budgeting in that year? So we used that sort of as our baseline. And what that actually will do if we defer the Ayton base is there will be savings in 2027 of about $8,700 of levy savings, but it will actually cost us more over because now we'll be debenturing more funds over the cost of the project. And this right now is not incorporated, just as a reminder, into the 2026 budget documents. Randy mentioned that over the course of before we even went to the BFC with our budget, we did, as staff sat through and looked at all of our budgets and reduced to about $531,000 or 0.66 of the levy. I'm not going to go into each details on each of these because it's multiple budgets, multiple budget lines. It's just a look that everyone did after we sort of got started. So I'm not going to go into detail, but I just wanted you to be aware that we're looking very closely at some of the budget impacts. A large impact too in the levy drivers that we see are previous council initiatives that we've always included and have been approved to include in the budget. The largest one obviously is our asset management plan. It is about 1.75% of our current levy. So we have a 4.4 million transfer to reserve in this year's budget, which is a $1.4 million increase over prior year. We have the healthcare funding transfer to reserve. It decreased slightly based on a recommendation back in the summer from the Budget and Finance Committee. So it decreased by $9,500. And we also have our affordable housing reserve, which is $718,900. So if we combine those three numbers together, we get about a 1.82% of our levy is included in those major initiatives. On this slide, so this is just, we're going to go back in time. So this year, last year, this time is what we sort of presented as and was approved for our 2025 budget and our 2026 projected. So we thought last year, based on everything we knew back then, that the levy increase would be about $4.9 million. And of that $4.9 million, these are the major drivers of that number. So we increased the asset management plan by $1.5 million. Transportation increased the machinery transfer for eventual electric fleet and additional vehicles of $134,000. The paramedic service enhancement plan, which has been brought quite a few times to this council, was a $410,000 increase. Housing increased their capital needs for assets and maintenance repairs to buildings of $441,000. There were slight savings in our community transit because rewind back a year, we thought the funding was going to end at the end of March. So we were budgeting that quarter through one-time funding. So things changed considerably in that area. And our salaries and benefits between our salary grid movements, COLA, benefit increases, it was about a $2.5 million impact on the levy last year. On this slide, what you'll see is sort of where we are today. So I have the last two columns that you just saw, and then today's column. So you'll see what the 2026 budget is now and what we're projecting for 2027. This slide just takes the information. I'm going to quickly, I'm not going to highlight this. This is more for just if you want to see where the levy impacts are happening, whether it's operating or capital, because it's pretty hard to see on that screen. If I go onto this slide, what you'll see here is, so when we were projecting last year, we had an $83.3 million expected levy for this year. Fast forward 12 months to today, we're sitting at an $85.4 million estimate in the levy right now, which is an increase compared to last year of $2.164 million, or a 2.6 increase. And the main drivers on that $2.1 million are, we have included the impact for the roads exchanges of $1.24 million. The staffing requests that were presented earlier was $339,700. There are some labor relations changes that accounted for about $958,000. We introduced court security this year, so that's impacting the budget by $150,000. And community transit is back in the budget, $445,000. And I increased our estimated supplemental revenue from last year based on, I looked, as we were looking historically and where some of the surpluses were, I did conclude that our supplemental revenues had been significantly higher than we had budgeted. So I did increase that with the hope of it's going to continue. And we did have some provincial funding changes that we weren't aware of last year. So that gets us pretty close to why we're different from last year. And this slide sort of shows you between our four corporate areas where we're different. We have approximately $1.8 million in our assessment growth this year. And the assumption on the 1.756 million assumes that we're still ratcheting down the multi-res ratio by quarter, which this will be the last year. So that's the net combination of those two numbers. And that leads us to that $6.68 million. And right now, 1% change in our residential rate is approximately $801,200. If we look at our current projected 2026 budget and our levy for 2027, we are projecting a $6.9 million levy increase for 2027. And those main drivers are asset management plan of $1.4 million, transportation machinery transferred reserves for electric fleet of $129,000. We have the $452,000 for Rockwood Terrace. We have staffing requests of $921,000 this year. And social services new build is about $70,000. The paramedic service enhancement plan is $431,000. The affordable housing transfer is $161,700. Housing capital is $235,000, and community transit is $51,100. And overall, our salaries and benefits accounts for about $2.9 million of the levy. So obviously, we don't know what our growth will be for 2027. So I have assumed that based on historical growth we've seen in the last few years, that we'll see a $1.4 million. So we're assuming that in 2027 that we could see after growth impact of 6.36%. I kind of had a slide out of order here, so I'm just going to go quick, a couple slides, and then I'll come back. So if I look at the impact on the property owner for the 2026 budget, based on the budget you currently see before you today, if I look at $100,000 in a residential assessment, the increase would be $27.90. And the average detached home in Grey County is assessed at $296,000. So that would make an estimated annual increase of $82.60. Does anyone have any questions on what because I'm going to kind of switch into a little bit different topic next.
Okay, let's look around, and if I could just ask the clerks to advise me if there are any hands up on virtually. We'll begin here in the room with Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Ward Metro Staff. Just a quick confirmation. We had a brief discussion with this about the Budget and Finance Committee as well. The 2027 projection for staffing shows, where did we go? Sorry, I'm trying to scroll back in my slides. The $921,400. Just confirming that that was if we didn't increase or the staffing this year, if we did increase the staffing this year. There was kind of a discussion about that at the Budget and Finance, so just making sure we're all clear at the table here.
Yes, the levy impact would be slightly. The levy impact is different, but if you added or subtracted those positions, that's the amount of levy that attaches to those positions. So the 921,000 you see versus the 339. If I looked at one that happened, you would know, okay, this year I had this and this year I had that. But if at some point you decided that that position, that's the total that was never there before, that is now there. So.
Okay, I see a question over here from Councillor Dobreen, and then we'll go to Councillor Eccles after that.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you. One question about court security. Is that directly related to the mandated increased presence of security at the provincial offences courts? And I know that we were trying to get an answer from the province as to whether or not there'd be funding to help support that. Is that what that amount is, 150,000?
For you, Madam Warden. Thank you for the question, Councillor Dobreen. So in 2024, we agreed in principle that we would pay court security costs for the city of Owen Sound that exceed the amount that they receive in provincial funding. And we budgeted $250,000. In a report to Budget and Finance last month, we acknowledged that's about $117,000 overspent, and we included $400,000 in this year's budget. And you're correct that at least part of the increase in costs, from our understanding, is the added court security, having armed officers in addition to the special constables. And whether there will be any additional funding provided by the province for this in 2026, we don't have that information yet.
Thank you. And we're always like a year behind because the funding is based on the prior year's costs, or something, I recall.
Through you, Madam Warden. Yes, you're correct. In discussions with finance staff at the City of Owen Sound, we determined the easiest way to provide the funding was we would fund based on the prior year's expenditures as submitted to the province.
Okay, Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you, Sue, in 2027, it's about 452,000. It's projected increase on the county levy for the Rockwood Terrace 28 beds. What's it costing us now per bed? Does that work out? Is it about the average? If we use the average number of what it's costing us now on the county levy per bed? Sorry.
I don't have that number right with me, but if you give us a few minutes, we can get you that.
Okay, there's a hand up over from the Deputy CEO.
Good morning. Thank you, through you, Madam Warden. Yeah, perhaps we could come back to that in a few minutes. Allow us some time just to pull the numbers together so we can give you an accurate answer on that one, but we can get the number.
No problem with that. I can certainly wait on that, see whether it comes up with the number that I have. The other question is on the roads exchange. We got 1.3, 1.4 million. in transfer funds that it's going to take? Is that on an asset management, the funds that are in that for the roads that are coming down to the lower tier?
Yeah, I think if recall back through the Urban Road Exchange Committee, so it's kind of like 2 million is going to be or 2.4, whatever it is, kind of a combination of increased spending and the equalization payments to the lower tiers. And 1 million kind of comes off that as savings for us doing urban maintenance. So that kind of where the 1.3 whatever comes out in the end. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking around the room. We'll go to Councillor Gregg next.
I just want to quickly touch upon that delayed capital project and the increased costs long term. That's only on the hard construction capital costs and doesn't actually include the operational costs of upstaffing, which is ancillary to once you create the base, you have to staff it. So there would be operational costs that get onboarded the moment that it gets open. So I would think that number is only responding to just the pure construction costs and not the actual fulsome whole cost of the asset.
I believe so, but let me double check that and get back to you.
Okay, we'll go to Director McNabb.
This funding is for the Ayton base, which that is for the car that is right now in Hanover that will move to Ayton once Ayton is built. So that the Ayton upstaff car started in 2026. So those operating costs are already in the budget as of right now.
Okay, looking around the room, confirming no hands online. So I think we are ready to go again. And you did mention that you're doing things a little bit differently. So if you could just identify the slide that you're going to continue with, that'll allow everybody to adjust their own personal notes. Thank you.
Pardon me, through you, Madam Moore. We're just going to switch back to slide 2024, please. I just wanted to, in these slides are sort of just a high level highlight of our reserves, our discretionary reserves, and a little bit we'll talk about obligatory reserves. There is in our online open book, there is a separate, what I call them cards, and it will actually has a little bit more detail on obligatory and our discretionary reserves. And there was an attachment on the agenda package that has more details on our reserves, which breaks these down between the three sort of ins and outs between 25, 26, and 27. But for now, I'm just wanted to highlight sort of where we're sitting for our reserves. So all of these assumptions that you see before you, 2024 year-end balance is based on our audited statements. And anything going forward is based either on budget or the 2025 projected contributions and withdrawals are based on our last report that we presented at Budget and Finance. So staff had done a year-end projected column. So these numbers drive off those projections. So we typically split our discretionary reserves sort of into three categories. We have working funds, which is about 1.93 million. That number stays consistent. And then we have some current funds and we have capital purpose reserves. So you can see in 2024, we start with about $65 million in our reserves. And by the end of 2025, we're projecting to be just slightly over that. And then you'll start to see in 2026 where some of our larger capital projects are expected to happen. And you'll see a decrease in our capital reserves we expect to be at the end of 2026 to have capital reserves of 22.36 million and 19.7 million in our current purpose working reserves. And then on the next slide sort of takes you then what happens based on our 2027 projections. And so we start again with a $44 million reserve balances in discretionary, and then we are forecasting by the end of 2027 that will be at 38 million, just a little over 38 million in our reserves. We also have our obligatory reserves, which are statutory reserves. So we have our development charges, which at the end of 2024 audited statements was 25.9 million. We are projecting that balance to be approximately 23.5 million in 2025, and in 2026, 23.8, and then at the end of 2027 to be 21.2. Those assumptions have made assumptions based on the revenues we will collect over development charges, and that can vary from year to year. And our Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as our gas tax funding, we had $8.9 million in 2024. And by the end of 2027, we will be back to 1.351 million. Those, some of those funds have been earmarked for some larger capital projects over the next couple of years. And I know throughout the year in our budgets, we typically will fund some stuff through our one-time funding reserve. So I just kind of wanted to highlight, based on our policy, kind of what that means and how and what we do with that. So within our reserve policy in the county, we do have sort of corporate stabilization reserves that we have set aside for the purpose of either mitigating significant increases in our taxes, one-time emergency and our unbudgeted expenditures, and tax stabilization due to increase in assessments or changes in assessment that were on. So in our policy, we sort of have set target balances for ourselves. We have a minimum balance that we don't want to ever go below of 3% of our corporate levy. We have a maximum balance of 15% of our corporate levy, and we have a target balance of 7% of our corporate levy. And on this slide, I sort of have highlighted what does that mean in dollars for us. So based on the budget you see before you, if we were to raise $85.4 million in levy, that would mean that our target balance would be about 5.9 million and our maximum would be about 12.8. And based on our estimated reserves, all of our corporate stabilization accounts, we are estimating that by the end of 2026, they will be $11.4 million, which is getting close to our maximum amount. But in the context of the conversations we'll have later today, I just thought it would be important to have that information. And that's pretty much where I'm going to end off, and I'm going to swap the microphone out for Mayor Liu. So if anyone has any other questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask if there are any questions. Thank you very much. You've laid on the table all the groundwork and the data that we have to contemplate as we go into decision-making later. So I'll just look around the room. Any further questions? We'll go to Councillor Gregg and then to Councillor Keaveney next.
The 3% one-time stabilization reserve, I think, Sue, you mentioned, what motivated the policy? What motivates tethering it to like an inflationary increase all the time? Or is this an old policy that exists, much like product labeling that was created in the 50s and now we have smart tags? Like, should it be reevaluated? And because the requirement for a one-time funding may not require it to be indexed all the way through.
Thank you for that question. It's actually quite timely because as I was refreshing, because this policy was made before I started here at the county, I believe in 2021. And ironically enough, Garrett and I noticed as we were looking at the policy that it is set for 2026 to review and update. So that will be on our work plans for next year, would be to update the policy. So I can't really attest to why it was done the way it was, but that's the policy we have. So yes, we will be looking at that in 2026.
Okay, thank you. Just before we go to Councillor Keaveney's question, we do have the answer ready about Rockwood. I know Director Cornell, or is there somebody else who's going to? Okay. Manager Reid, are you providing that? Let's just get that caught up and then I'll go to Councillor Keaveney and then I'll keep looking around the room for any other questions.
Good effort.
I think a group effort is a good approach. Because Jared has the details, and so we can get into the details, but through you, Madam Warden, and good morning, everyone. So to answer your question, Councillor Eccles, the amount per bed is actually a reduction per bed, even though it's an increase in the overall levy. So we did a budget exercise to make sure that we are projecting actuals of the cost for the additional 28 beds, which also comes with some efficiencies by having the layout of the building with the 4 home areas, 32 residents per home area. We were able to see some efficiencies. So if we had just taken what is it? It was. So currently the cost per bed to the levy for enhancements is $28,300 per bed. If we had just taken that and multiplied it by 28, it would have been 793,000, and we're only increasing 452,000 to the levy. So it actually reduces the per bed by about $1,700 per bed.
I just want to give an opportunity for a follow-up for Councillor Eccles before we go back over to Councillor Keaveney.
So those efficiencies are found in those 28 beds. They'll also be found in the new 100 beds. So that's been put into place as well too. So we can look at a reduction. If it hasn't been, the reduction would be 1.7.
Right, through you, Warden Matrosovs. So those efficiencies are seen kind of on a whole across the operating for the new build. So a number of operating factors were taken into consideration to reflect that reduction. So that's the whole reduction per bed for levy on a whole. You want to add maybe?
Yeah, I think I just want to clarify that a big part of the reason why we're saying these beds are cost less per bed is because you're now distributing those costs over 120 beds as opposed to 100. So administration and things like that don't go up when you add 128 beds. If you simply go $452,000, which is the proposed increase for the Rockwood redevelopment, and divide that by the 28 beds that are being added, it's $16,100 per bed. That's the incremental cost of those beds. But when you look at it as a whole 128, it is pulling the average cost of all of those beds down together.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. We'll go over to Councillor Keaveney next, and then I'll look for any other hands.
Thank you, Warden Matrosovs, and good morning, everyone. I'm back on page 24, and I'm just curious, the mostly for the capital portion of the 2026 budgeted withdrawals, is a portion of that Rockwood Terrace related, or is that mostly the other capital projects, the roads and that sort of thing?
So yeah, it's a combination of multiple, if you look at the reserve continuity schedule that's attached in your agenda package, it does. So if you look at the section that says based on preliminary budget, December 31st, 2026, there is a 2026 budgeted withdrawals column. So if you look down that column, you will see exactly sort of what reserves are affecting that. So let me just see if I can find the Rockwood one. There's quite a few, and these are actually a little bit summarized for you because we are combined similar ones together. Just to find the right one. So the money we had been putting aside for a reserve for the Rockwood Terrace, we used all of that in 2024 for our capital expenditures in 2024.
Okay, thank you. I'll just look around the room here for any final hands. The Deputy Treasurer, nothing online. Thank you, Deputy Treasurer. That was a very nice introduction in order to give us what we need to be equipped with for the later part of this agenda. So now you get to take a break and we'll call upon Director Spicer. Thank you. While you're getting set up, there is a question. Did I hear a question? No? Okay, thank you. And we'll carry on.
Thank you very much. Get Brittany to advance the slide, please, and thank you. So Sue mentioned earlier in the presentation that after the November 26th Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we were asked a number of questions at that meeting, including about prior year surplus, reserve balances, and if there were opportunities to use one-time funding to offset the levy increase and reduce it from the 6.68. So after that meeting, staff reviewed some strategies that could reduce the levy. And the first things we looked at were anything that would not affect operations. And so the next few slides discuss these opportunities. The first is, we've talked over a number of years that we have 3 internally financed debentures. And so we call them debentures, but basically we've borrowed from our own reserves versus going to Infrastructure Ontario or a bank. The first one is the Chatsworth Paramedic Services base. Built into our budget is a levy requirement of $65,400 because we round to even dollars. The other one is for Greg Abels. It's an annual contribution of $73,200. And the administration building, and that's for the expansion and renovation that we undertook in 2018, and that is $706,500. So basically, we borrowed from ourselves. We could pay off these debentures in 2026, and that removes the expense from the budget. So if you look at it in one hand, it's like we've borrowed from ourselves, so I take it out of one pocket, and it goes back to the pocket of, here's the reserve that we've accessed. And if you go to the next slide. So when we looked at that, it creates an overall levy decrease of $845,200, which based on the current budget of a 1% increase is $801,200. That's a 1.05 reduction to the residential rate. We would use $4.144 million of one-time funding reserve to pay off that principal amount of the debenture. It brings our one-time funding reserve to our target balance. As I mentioned previously, it reduces the levy without affecting levels of service. There are minimal losses of revenue, and I'll call that a loss of revenue because when we self-finance these, we charge ourselves interest, and it was based on the Infrastructure Ontario interest rate at the time we did our debentures. So it doesn't have a levy impact. It just means that without that revenue, you're transferring less money to the one-time funding reserve. So it's kind of just going around in circles. And the other thing it does is it increases the room available on our annual repayment limit for borrowing capacity. So even though it was self-financed, what we do is like it still impacts our borrowing capacity. We have to record it. And if we go to the next slide. So what this demonstrates is if we remove that $845,200 in debt payments and current borrowing rates are at 4.48%, that means that you would have access to borrow $12.5 million more than what you currently would. And I will say that those 3 internally financed debentures, they all mature in 2030 or 2031. So we would be paying them off early and reducing the levy. I'll go to the next slide. Maybe what I'll do is I'll pause and see if anybody has any questions on that.
Okay, I will look around the room if there are any questions on that specific item before we look at anything else. Not seeing any hands here and confirming with the clerks, nobody online. Therefore, please proceed.
Thank you. So again, we look at that as a win-win. We're reducing the levy, we're not impacting operations, and these have all been built into the budget for a number of years, and we would just be advancing the payment. The next one, I know this is a small in comparison, but we wanted to bring it forward. We have some recently finalized forestry tenders that will take place. The work will be done in 2026. And we received $14,100 more than has been budgeted. So what we would do is increase the sale of the forestry projects by $14,100, and that decreases the residential rate by 0.02%. Now, it seems like a proverbial drop in the bucket, but it's $14,100. Okay. And we'll go to the next slide. That's another way of show there. Well, I think we're going backwards. Okay, sorry. So this slide demonstrates that between the two things, we could reduce the levy by $859,300, which is a 1.07% decrease. And in 2027, that $845,200 also would not be in the levy. So what you've seen in the projected column for 2027, that would reduce it by almost 1%. And so I'm just going to say that when we started this morning with our presentation, we were at 6.68%. If you agree with those two recommendations, that reduces the residential rate to 5.61%. And then the next piece is we would go into closed session to discuss another option.
Okay, so before we go into that, so thank you very much. We very much appreciate staff looking deeply into, I don't want to use the word creative because it's intentional. It's not making something up, but by looking, dutifully looking at reasonable ways in which we can manage our own finances. And it's a very interesting scenario you presented with the internal shift that way. So thank you for presenting that. It's always welcome news to see opportunities in which we can decrease what the end levy will be. But I imagine there may be some questions that are revolved around that because that's something we haven't entertained before. So I will just put the question out before we get a brief introduction from the deputy CAO before we go into closed session. So are there any further questions then for Director Spicer or the Deputy Treasurer? Not seeing any hands up here in the room nor online. So thank you. I think we're all maybe in a bit of shock on that one. So let's listen intently and move further into the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much, Director Spicer. Okay, so with that then, Deputy CAO, no, you don't have an introduction. You'll wait until we go into close. So Madam Clerk, it is recommended that the Committee of the Whole does now go into closed session pursuant to Section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss labor relations or employee negotiations with regards to union negotiations. And this, of course, is with the lens of our budget. So with that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Eccles, seconded by Councillor Mackey. It's on the floor for discussion to go into closed. Seeing no hands raised, all those in favor? And we have on favor online as well. Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll need a moment to clear the room and to change over technology. Thank you. Thank you. We have come out of closed session and I can report that the Committee of the Whole discussed information on labor relations or employee negotiations in closed session related to union negotiations. With that, we have a recommended motion that the 2026 budget and 2027 projected budget be adjusted to incorporate 227,000 and 235,000 respectively from the one-time funding reserve for the Paramedic Services Department. May I ask for a mover? Moved by Councillor Dobreen, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. At this point in time, we will call a 10-minute break. So if we could reconvene at 11:25, we will carry on with the agenda. Thank you. Sorry, 35. 11:35. Not that quick of a break.
Yeah.
I could just please invite our committee, of the whole members back to the horseshoe. Okay, so we are reconvening and we have been in closed session. We reported out. We have just come back from our break and we are now then going to be continuing on slide 37 and 38. Well, 37 is just the introduction. So slide 38. And Director Spicer, we look back to you.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to give a bit of an update. So before the closed session, I had mentioned that with the opportunities that we mentioned about reducing the debenture payments and increasing the forestry revenue, that would reduce the current residential rate from 6.68% increase to 5.61. And with the motion that was passed when we came out of closed, that reduces the levy increase to 5.33%. Next, we'll talk about the supported recommendations. So at the November 26th, 2025 Budget and Finance Committee, there were items that were referred to County Council for further discussion, as the minutes from that meeting won't pass until next week on the 11th. There were a few things that were discussed, and there's social pinpoint software and it's a levy requirement of $30,000. A proposed asset management contribution increase of $1,541,800. And there was discussion about the GTR fare increase. So currently that fare is $5 a ride, including HST. If we increased it by $1, this would result in an approximate increase in revenue of about $4,800 for 8 months. Just because of, there's the one small route that's going from Dundalk to Orangeville, and based on what we're currently seeing in ridership. So those were the three areas that they wanted referred back to the meeting today. And the next slide is about social pinpoint, and I'll let Rob speak to this as it's within his budget.
Thank you, Mary Lou, and through you, Madam Warden. I just was going to speak to you a little bit about Social Pinpoint this morning and what Social Pinpoint is. Some of you will know because you have it at your municipality. I think Great Highlands is currently operating it. This is a digital engagement platform, and what this platform does essentially is it provides the tools to increase the accessibility and ease of engagement with the community by bringing an online website to the people so that we can better engage with them and get their input and inform them on projects and services that we are delivering to the community so that they can understand them better and provide input on those services. We've been exploring the possibility of building a regional platform for digital engagement. And that's why we are looking at Social Pinpoint specifically. It's somewhat unique in that it would allow there to be kind of a Grey County hub that interconnects with local municipal engagement sites as well, so that our residents could engage on both upper tier and lower tier matters all in one centralized place. These initial conversations have been going on with the local CAOs group as well. We've had some demos with local municipal staff so that they could see that as well and see the way that an integrated program could work together. And really the benefits of these platforms for us in this room is that it gives us data and information to better inform decision making around the horseshoe or at the management level. because we can see what matters most to people, and the data that comes in through these platforms, it's really validated, and it's easier to quantify and qualify the data that's coming in, so that we can trust it better, and it gives us something that we can also include in reports back as well, so that we could gauge sentiment on proposals. And just looking ahead for the next 2, 3, 5 years, we do know that there are some Grey County specific opportunities coming up where we'd really benefit from having a platform like this. When you look at complicated topics like strategic planning, or even things like the road transfers, it's really a more comprehensive way that we can speak to the community about these complicated topics and get their feedback on those. So the cost is $30,000 for the platform. Now that budgeted amount is the Grey County Go It Alone cost. But as we have looked at this from a regional model perspective, if we do get participation from municipalities to go in on this as well, there is a cost of the opportunity for reduced rates for everyone that is participating in it. So that Grey County's 25 or 30,000 would be down closer to 25 annually. And then each local municipality would need to pay for the platform as well, but their rates would be reduced as well. But again, all of those platforms then would talk to each other. So if someone goes to the Chatsworth one to engage on something on arenas or something like that, they would also see opportunities to engage on county matters while they're there. Likewise, if they came to the county site and they were interested in recreation, they could filter by recreation and see what's available in their own municipality. So that's just a quick overview of that.
Thank you. Just hold on a moment, just in case there are any questions in terms of that social pinpoint, and we'll go to the deputy warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Rob, for the description of this software. Do we have any kind of indication what the participation rate is for these type of softwares? Over the years, I've seen different attempts to get, the pulse of the community, so to speak. And inevitably, if a hot topic lands on the floor, you get a pile-on effect for that topic, but nothing else. And over time, people start to say, screw it, I'm not going to bother. It doesn't matter. I have to say, I think if we're all doing our job, we know what the hot topics are. We know what our community is saying. We know what our ratepayers are thinking. So I struggle supporting this. I'll be honest. Data is important. And the data that we do get typically is accurate. But is it enough? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Hatton, did you want to reply?
Yeah, just to that point, certainly you're right. There are going to be topics that get a lot more engagement. And actually, if you have a controversial is maybe not the right word, but something like that to launch the platform, that's fantastic. With these platforms, I think you get as much out of them as you're willing to put into them. So the amount of effort that the municipality is willing to use the platform and put projects and services on there and make it something that the community regularly wants to check in on and they really feel a part of it. I think that's where you build momentum over time and you get that repeated participation. And I absolutely agree that you, as the counselors in the community, you're talking to people, you're hearing from people all the time, and you do have a good sense of the pulse. But I know that there are more introverted community members out there as well that are less likely to engage in person, and these online digital opportunities are good for them, and as well people that have maybe less accessibility to go out to community events and other places where you may be, they would be able to participate digitally as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Gregg next.
I appreciate staff looking for alternatives in terms of ways of funding the initiative. I do disagree with it. fundamentally, I'm against the expenditure on it. Doesn't matter where it's funded from. I was umpiring one night in Desboro when they had the community meeting about closing the arena. I don't think when there's hot topic items, you need an extra social medium beyond. We're already allocating staffing resources to maintaining Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I think the Rogers campaign looked like a great TikTok initiative as well that was just presented. There's so many mediums I think we're already into, and every time we add one, it's either acknowledging we have additional staff capacity that can accommodate it, or you're going to have to add capacity in the back end to fund everything. You mentioned about explaining the services we are offering to citizens. I would just say it's my opinion, if we have to explain the services we are offering, it is not just providing services that we're doing, rather we're looking to create them. And I see our role is just to strictly maintain ourselves as a service provider. So I think we're going a little bit out of our lane for what we need to with this initiative. So I would be against it.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Eccles next.
Thank you very much, Madam Warden, and through you to Rob, and kind of touched on by Councillor Gregg. The collection of data. And I guess what scares me the most about this is that fact right there. Do we have the capacity? Do the communications at the lower tier individuals have the capacity to get out of that the data analysis? And it's one thing that I keep hearing, data in different corporations that I've dealt with. Oh, we've got all of this data. But the next thing you know, they back to you and say, yeah, I need 3 more new people. Where does the web go? How many more people are we going to have to be able to run this and collect the data out of it that maybe would benefit us in the decision making going forward? It's the creep that scares me on this as well too.
And through you, Madam Warden, I wouldn't anticipate any additional staff resourcing being needed through this. Like through the reporting features on these platforms, they summarize that data for you. They have built-in capabilities to scan the comments and help judge sentiment. Depending what features you're using, it can give you an average of the sentiment on something. If you're asking people like out of a scale, how much they agree with something, they can summarize that. I really don't think that there would be any additional staff time going into the data. It would just be there present to us that we could pull from it and share it, rather than when we use social media. Our best real gauge of sentiment there is thumbs up. And if you would have told me 12 years ago that I was going to judge the effectiveness of my marketing campaigns by how many thumbs up I get on something, I wouldn't have believed you. But this takes it a little bit beyond that and gives us something more that we can trust.
So it sounds like we'll be able to downstaff, because it seems that there's going to be a lot of AI in this. And I'll be quiet now.
Okay, we'll just go over to the CAO.
Through you, Warden, and thank you for all the comments and questions regarding this. I think I know this to the Budget and Finance Committee. We did have discussions with this amongst the local CAOs. And we had a demo of Social Pinpoint with the CAOs. Definitely, the group consensus was seeing value with the platform. Again, whether or not you can roll this out across regionally with every municipality on board day one, probably not. But over time, we think there's definitely merit to explore this. Having that consistent regional platform and message to be able to communicate and engage with our residents, especially when we're working on regional projects, I think there's merit and benefit to that. We've seen and talked to a number of municipalities that have rolled this platform out and have seen tremendous benefit from that. And as Rob has indicated, there's some reporting tools that are built right in that will allow us to gather some of that data and information very quickly to be able to report back to council when we're looking for that feedback from residents and community with respect to whatever project or initiative that we're working on at that time. So that's why staff are bringing this forward as a recommendation. Obviously, we'll take council's direction in terms of where you want to go with this, but just want to provide that further feedback.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Dobreen.
Thank you. And through you, Rob, the social pinpoint, you're looking at social pinpoint, but have you considered or compared it to iMatter? Small I, capital MATR. They were at the AMO conference and Roma conference, and they've been reaching out. I don't know enough about them, but they also provide a platform similar to this, where it's a secure engagement tool. There may be a value just having a look and comparing the two, and perhaps there's some cost differences as well. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, through you, Madam Warden. I'm not actually familiar with that specific one, and I have looked at a lot of engagement platforms over the last multiple years. What really stood out was Social Pinpoint, that we started going down this path more seriously in the last year, was that regional model piece and the benefits that we have to the community if we can make it simpler for them to engage at both the upper and lower tier level. So I'll have to look into that one to see if it also offers that similarly. But in comparing this particular tool with other engagement platforms that are offering a regional model, this one did come out for sure as the preferred software. And in reaching out and speaking with other communities, I have learned as well. The city or the region of Waterloo was the first or one of the earlier adopters of this platform, and they do it on the regional level in Waterloo. And it's been quite successful with them, and they have smaller local municipalities that have come on with them as well. And they had been with previous other providers out there before, and they said that the service was night and day improved when they've went to this platform as well.
Okay, thank you. Looking around the room, we'll go to Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, and through you, Warden Matrosovs. I could use a little help just understanding how we spend $30,000 and get a 0.04% decrease in the residential rate. Am I missing something here? I just don't quite get it.
Through you, Madam Warden. To respond to Councillor Kentner's question, if we fund this in the 2026 budget from the one-time funding reserve, it would reduce our levy requirement by $30,000, which is a 0.04% decrease in the residential rate.
If I may, a supplementary, I think we're a bit early because I know in Meaford, we've budgeted a big number for a complete revamp of a really tired and awkward system website. And I'm unaware that whether or not our staff is interested in this or not. I just don't know. And it would be, as I say, I just think we're maybe a bit early on this one. And nothing is changing faster than the software world. I don't think so. Thank you.
And through you, Madam Warden, I have been in contact with staff at the municipality of Meaford, and they are interested in this as a platform. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I can hear, we'll go to Counselor Eccles.
This is sole sourced? Or are we gonna go out with an RFP? For this? That's on the purchasing. Yeah, that's my question. On this, so we already decided that Social Point's the one and we've gone through purchasing to come up with this? I don't really remember. But then again, we don't see all the RFPs that go out on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so this has been discussed with the purchasing team, and I mentioned Region of Waterloo earlier. When they issued their RFP, they did include clauses in that said other public sector organizations in Ontario could follow along on their RFP as well. And in speaking with our finance department between that we could use that for sure, as well as all of the work and demos that have gone on in checking out other platforms. Knowing that this platform does have the features that we like, we would be able to move forward with Social Pinpoint. Yeah.
Okay, and Counselor Greg, right?
I'll just put a motion on the floor that this expenditure be removed from the 2026 budget. And that's not speaking to where it's funded from, but that it be removed. I don't think it's been identified by any of the 18 counselors throughout the last year that there's a gap or that the requirement has been spoken to on behalf of council. I understand where staff might be coming from in terms of identifying different engagement processes, but I haven't heard any discussion around this table in terms of motivating or initiating the action or needing to identify a correction to a problem that hasn't been spoken to yet at the table here. So I'll just put that in the floor that it be removed from the 2026 budget. Thanks.
Okay, it's been moved by Counselor Gregg and seconded by Counselor Mackey. So it's now on the floor for discussion. I'll ask Madam Clerk if you can make sure that it's visible on a screen. Let's see it on the screen. Yeah, just making sure that everybody can see it as well. There we go. Okay, so it's recommended that the social pinpoint, that social pinpoint item be removed from the 2026 budget. That was moved by Counselor Gregg, seconded by Counselor Mackey. And that's the wording we're looking at. Okay, thank you. It's now on the floor for discussion. We'll begin with Counselor McQueen and then we'll go to Counselor Pringle after that.
So I'm seeking a little bit of clarity and just asking, and I'm just, so as we move along in social media and, you know, probably 15 years ago, we all had Blackberries and now we all have iPhones or whatever. And I know the platforms come along with that. I guess my question is, does this capture the younger cohorts? So today, my kids don't use email. They do Facebook a little bit, or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever news coming on. The platform keeps changing. I don't know enough about this, and I think a lot of us around here, but is this, and we always struggle to reach out to the younger cohorts, is this something that would capture that? That cohort group? Is it more of a format, you know, like I don't think anybody writes a letter and says, you know, dear Brian Millen, how are you today? Like, you know what I mean? Like it keeps moving, our connection and contact keeps moving. So can you explain a little bit? And maybe we need a demonstration. I don't know, but so that's my question. Does this capture the younger cohorts?
Through you, Madam Warden. I wouldn't say that it is going to specifically target younger cohorts. It's probably going to be more appreciated because younger people are more apt to use a digital tool than to go out and engage in person. I think that's just something that we recognize personality-wise is changing with the generational gap. But that said, we still need to let that generation know that the tool exists. So we're still going to need to use other tactics to promote a platform like this to all demographics so that they know to go there and engage. But I do certainly feel like this would be more appropriate than a public meeting or newspaper promotions, those sort of things to younger audiences. Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Warren. I just was curious to know if council would be an appetite for something like this, come back to the joint municipality group committee to do more research on it, to follow up to see if there is an advantage to a municipality being part of it, and without expending a whole pile of money on it. But I just wondered if there's something the joint municipality group could look at to get a better idea, understanding of what we're looking for.
Okay, I know that you've touched already with talking staff to staff, but do you have any comment on that suggestion that it goes to the joint committee? Manager Haddon? Oh, actually, we'll look to the CAO for that.
Through you, Warden, happy to take direction of council, obviously. That is definitely a topic if directed by this council body that we could bring forward to the Joint Missile Service Committee and provide them with an update or further information. Do a demo with that committee and maybe do a demo back with the council, depending on the discussion or direction. So again, happy to take the direction from council with respect to that, but it's one avenue that could be explored.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Councillor Greg. I have a question too, but if it's not asked, then I will ask my question afterwards. So Councillor Greg?
I would just say it's two separate conversations. The first is the purity of the motion that's on the floor. The second is that any member of that committee next year could bring an item like this back forward for discussion and provide guidance to staff through that discussion for consideration in the 2027 budget creation.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, can I just confirm then, if this motion passes the way it is in terms of reconsideration, the joint committee would be free to go ahead and continue the discussion, learn more about it, and ask that something be considered in 2027 without restriction? Okay, could you just confirm that with the mic?
If council does decide to remove this item from the 2026 budget, and the matter went to Joint Municipal Services Committee, that committee could discuss the item further and bring a suggestion back for council to consider in the future. We may have to handle it a certain way at the time, but to initiate those discussions, there's no issue.
Okay, thank you. And to Councillor Dobreen then. Okay, we just heard from Councillor McLean, so if I could just, I'll make sure I circle back to any second comments.
Thank you. And through you, I'm all for finding a way to better connect with residents officially. We have tried in Southgate bang the table, no success. We have just recently done an engagement about our forecasting and budgeting tools. We had 90 people respond, which is actually better than we've ever had. And we use SurveyMonkey. There are platforms out there. My understanding from a quick search is that Grey Highlands is already using Social Pinpoint. It's called Connect Grey Highlands. And I'd be interested through this discussion to find out what our own municipalities, what kind of improved engagement that has shown. We have the opportunity right there. I don't feel that we have enough information to say yes or no. I'd be more interested to learn more about Social Pinpoint and how our municipalities can get on board. And if they're engaging with Grey County and they find out that, oh, I can comment on this in Southgate or Grey Highlands, or they may become more engaged. So thank you. I'm intrigued by it, because I've been approached by iMatter as well. So I want all the information. I'd rather see it held as a placeholder for now, or at least get some more information.
Okay, so, okay, hold on. Too many side conversations going on here. So, okay. So I do have, there is Counselor Carlton, there is Counselor McQueen. Madam Clerk, if there's a will to postpone the decision to defer, we would need a motion to defer, or can we just table it until our round 2, which is next Friday?
My recommendation, since it is on the floor, that it could be deferred until the December 12th meeting.
Okay, so I'll just leave that thought then, but I want to take the hands that are already up. So I'm going to go to Counselor McQueen, then I'm going to go to Counselor Carlton, and I'll still ask my question if it's not asked.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I guess you don't know what you don't know, but I just Googled it here, and there's a number of points here that are on the, when you Google it. It says 1 point, increase public participation, making it easy for people to give input and feedback regardless of location or schedule. Another one is Social Pinpoint is an all-in-one community engagement platform that empowers organizations to connect with their communities right where they are. There's a lot of things on here, so I would support a deferral just so we get more information and more background. You know, obviously there's a connection to LinkedIn and social or Instagram and so it seems to be connected to all those that you mentioned that, Rob, that is connected to those platforms. So I'm just in the last minute Google, and there's a lot of stuff here, so maybe we need time to get more information.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Counselor Carlton and then put a last call out for hands. We'll go to Counselor Carlton next online.
Thank you, Warden. I guess what I'm wondering is I agree with what Councillor McQueen is saying, that there's a younger generation that look to interact differently. I also feel we don't have enough information to really make a decision on this totally. So I'm wondering if we can amend the motion to ask that while it be removed from 2026, that it be referred to that joint committee for more information and for there perhaps to be a presentation to all of council and to the lower tier municipalities so that we can have that information going forward.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Carlton. And Madam Clerk, the proposition then is to move an amendment to do those items, or is it that we vote on this one and then if it fails, or sorry, if it succeeds either way, succeeds or fails, there's a separate motion? Would you like that directive to come as a separate motion or as an amendment to this main motion?
I think in the interest of not losing sight of the motion as part of 2026 budget discussions, because I think council will need to make a decision on that for 2026. I would recommend a deferral until December 12th, pending further information. And then perhaps at that time, council can revisit the discussion on whether it goes to joint municipal services and is removed from budget, or is just voted down altogether or voted in support of.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the question that I have then, Manager Hatton, is when I was looking it up to try to understand how is this in the parallel universe of social media that's happening with Facebook and all of the other platforms, how is it different? What is it doing? Does it actually create efficiency for staff time versus disperse staff time even further? So it refers to the 40 dynamic engagement tools. So the question I have for you is just so that we have it clear, and then I'll look for somebody to move a motion. If there's going to be a motion of referral, I'll have to make sure there's the opportunity for somebody to move that prior to voting on this main motion. If you could just zero back in on how is this different than the traditional social media, and what is that above and beyond that it's allowing us to do in the context of the other questions I've been asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So the platform itself, it will serve as a hub for specific projects that we want to engage on. So residents would be able to subscribe and participate in those particular ones or any other project that they're interested in doing. It has, like you said, the 40 engagement tools. There's a lot more features with those tools than what social media provides. Social media is an okay soundboard for people sharing comments and ideas. For, like I said, you can provide those reactions, but that's really it. There's not a whole lot of substance from the feedback that you get through social media. So this platform would allow us to do more in-depth engagement, really to the level that we want to engage. And we can share that out through the platform to all of the channels where people are. So you make an engagement page for something like road exchanges, and then with the clicks of a button, you can make it promote the engagement on LinkedIn, on the county LinkedIn. You can promote it on the county Facebook, on the county Instagram page, the other places where people are, but then they come into the platform to use those more robust tools to give us the information.
Okay, so with that example, something like the reference that they have to interactive maps, if there's a topic about a road exchange and somebody's interested because it sounds like it's in their neck of the woods, they could then go to this platform, click on an interactive map, for example, learn more about it, provide feedback and comments right there. Is that the idea?
Yes, and with the mapping example too, if it was something like we had input our road projects for the year and we just wanted to inform the public about where they were, and if a resident was concerned about their something specific along the line, they could also drop a pin in so that when that feedback comes to us, we know specifically this is the location where they're stating that they've seen concerns about the ditch overflowing or whatever it would be. There's a lot of those spatial benefits from the mapping tools as well.
Okay, so that's just an example. Thank you. So we are on the discussion of the main motion, which is about removing it from the 2026 budget. So at this point in time, we're still in discussion of that. This will be the opportunity if somebody wishes to move a motion to defer to our next committee, the whole meeting, December 12th. Okay, Councillor McQueen, do you want to just name what it is that you're moving?
I will make a motion to defer it to our next budget meeting.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor McQueen is moving that the motion be deferred to the December 12th, 2025, pending further information on social pinpoint being presented. Preferred path. Okay, all right. So it's been seconded by Councillor Dobreen. So that is now on the floor for discussion. The discussion item is simply stopping the discussion here on the main motion, waiting until next week when we reconvene, hopefully with further information being presented, as well as the opportunity to explore back home. So is there any discussion on deferring that by 1 week? Councillor Nielsen.
Just a quick comment saying, I mean, you can check out connectgreyhounds.ca to see how the platform itself works and what available information is there. It's a pretty quick Google search if you want to see a test for yourself.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on deferring it by 1 week? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of deferring to December 12th? Okay, I'm gonna need to do a count of hands here. Okay, so Madam Clerk, that motion is carried. Okay, so we will then pick up this discussion in a week's time. Thank you. Thank you very much, Manager Hatton. Okay, so Director Spicer, this is your opportunity with the final slide to wrap up and talk about what we're going to be doing. We already know one thing we're going to do on December 12th, but I do wish to ask a question just to circle back to, just hold on. I've got lots of conversations going on in the room here. Okay. Right. Madam Clerk, are we good for a process to continue? Okay, thank you. All right, so I do want to circle back to what is new information for us to contemplate, which has a significant reduction difference in the levy, and that is the strategy about the debenture that you described. Because it looks like an excellent opportunity to be able to save 1% or more change than that 1+% off of our 2026 budget and the levy implication. The question is why didn't we do that before in previous years, and why are we in a position now to consider it and for it to be able to make a good decision now as well as in the future years. So if you could just again share the information that you have shared with us, but in that question that either people here at the Horseshoe or people in our communities may be asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and it's a great question. So we have the three debentures, and as I mentioned, they all mature in 2030 or 2031. And the plan at the time that the self-financed debentures were issued was, for example, for paramedic services in the Chatsworth base, that debenture would fall off and it would be available, that levy amount of $65,400 would be available for paramedic services capital. And for Grey Gables, the $73,200, again, we are aware that the Grey Gables reserve was insufficient. When that debenture payment was finished, it would just continue to reside in Grey Gables levy and it would go toward their future capital needs. And the administration building, $706,500. When that was paid off, the plan was we would transfer that levy contribution to the housing department. So it's not that there hasn't been a plan for the funds. What we're looking at right now is you have significant pressures on the budget and more from the operating side and to a small extent for asset management planning. But as a means to reduce this budget without impacting levels of service, we would remove those from the budget, and then we would look in the future at the capital needs and work on adjusting the reserve balances. And we could do some work between reserves perhaps, and whether it's, going between reserves or collapsing reserves, but thought that this was a way to offer you an opportunity that we could reduce the levy contribution.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And just as you're about to conclude your section, I'll just put a last call out for any general questions to Director Spicer. We'll go to Councillor Body.
I'll have a series of questions here. Right now in 2025, do we have an estimate of what our deficit or surplus is going to be for this year?
Through you, Madam Warden, yes, we do. So it was presented to Budget and Finance Committee at the November 26th meeting, and we were sitting around 300,000, give or take a few thousand. So it's very close. There were some departments, obviously the significant pressure has been winter and snow removal budgets being over, and in some departments they tried to scale back what they could to reduce the impact on the 2025 budget.
Thank you. So I note 2024, $4.4 million surplus, so about 6% of the levy. 2023, 1.8 million, or about 2.35% of the levy. 2022, 1.6 million surplus, approximately 2.45% of the levy. Those are big numbers. And of course, we're budgeting this year based on last year's budget, not last year's actuals, and we do that each year. Is there an explanation, or how do we get such big surpluses? 300,000 isn't a big surplus, but we had a wicked winter last year that we may or may not have. Just trying to figure out how we got to that, and if we're starting with a base amount that we're putting 5 point something on, it is too high right from the start. My thinking is that we should be able to identify why we're over budget. Sorry, under budget, why we have such great surpluses each year. Identify what that area is and budget like 1% less this year in that area. And if I miss, we've still got, even if we get down to the target amount on the one-time funding, we've still got money there to account if we miss. But it just seems to me that we've overtaxed the last number of years, and we've got a chance to make a correction of that. I'm not talking about dipping into reserves to pay off things. I'm talking about adjusting that budget so that it's appropriate to what we're actually spending. And identifying the area that we are overspending. Do we have an explanation of where we're are over budgeting and raising those surpluses?
Through you. I'll speak to 2024. 2024 was a unique year. With the over $4 million in surplus, a vast chunk of that was from long-term care. So we received direct care staffing funding, and we were receiving about $1,212 per resident per bed in 2023. In 2024, they told us it would go to a range of just over $1,300 a bed to just over $1,700 a bed, with no formula or mechanism to determine how that would be calculated. I recommended that we go with the low end, which was just over 1,300, because what was going to happen if we budgeted 1,500 and it came in at 1,300, we had an in-year deficit and we had a future budget year deficit for 2025 to start off the hopper. What happened was, I would call it unprecedented. The ministry gave over $1,800 per bed for this year, starting in April. And again, with no calculation. So being the service delivery partner of the province, and we're at the whim of when they release what our funding will be, that's how that chunk of long-term care surplus happened. With the other years, one of the things that we've discussed with budget and finance is a number of departments, and this isn't by far everything, but sometimes we have staffing challenges. So in my own department, we have been unable to fill mat leaves. Then you have someone leave. There's a period of time between when they leave and when you can recruit. And during COVID, we received more funding for various things. We're still sitting with subject to year end, we're still sitting with a wee bit of money for Safe Restart funding that offset some costs. And I will speak to, we're not just taking last year's budget and adding a percentage. We're asking staff to be mindful of what goes into a budget number, and that we've been doing with Questica. So if you, in my own department, staff training, here's how much per person, here's what we're thinking of doing, et cetera. And then in, say, for example, housing, we might have had some surplus because capital projects came in more favorable than estimated. So yes, those have gone to what we brought to committee as a reserve transfers with our surplus once we knew what our surplus was. I will say we are very mindful of when you use surplus. So if we have a dedicated reserve contribution, we put it to reserve for a purpose, and we ask that it not be withdrawn for something other than the purpose. So if I was putting money away in paramedic services to buy ambulances, well, we're not going out and buying a track unit that can go down hills that I've seen in other areas, for example. I can't think of the right word. And then we've also put the surplus away to the one-time funding reserve where it's appropriate, and that's most often corporate services surplus. And we use that for other things that will be non-recurring needs, and Sue's slides spoke to that. When I get to the finance budget, you'll see in the capital, we are proposing we use some of that money when we have to use to replace our accounting software, Great Plains, which is nearing end of life. I hope that helps to explain.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Councillor Body?
Thank you. By no means did I mean to suggest that staff aren't trying to control budgets or that they are spending surpluses on anything that they shouldn't spend on. That's not my indication or my thoughts at all. But when we come here, we're looking at a 5% increase based on last year's budget. And I still see that there's a amount of surplus. Yes, we put money into surplus. Yes, we put that into capital or into spending in the right area. But it's not really being honest with our taxpayers if we are putting money into surplus and we're counting on that in the end of the year to spend it down the road when that wasn't what we budgeted for. We budgeted for the operations to be spent in this given year. I mean, it's always better to have a surplus than a deficit. My dartboard theory, it's always closer to be dead center on what you're budgeting for and aim for the goal, not surplus or deficit going wider. But I just keep looking at this going, you know, a 1% decrease on the budget this year, taking in what we've done with surpluses the last couple of years. I just think there's got to be a way of getting tighter to that dartboard, to that center. I'm frankly hoping that staff have ideas before we get back here next week of how to get us under 5%. And I think that surplus annually somehow needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Through you, Warden, and thank you for those comments. I think with the rollout of the Questica software that we're using more frequently now this year, I think there's opportunities for us to be able to get some more insights. I won't use the word data because we used that previously, but there would definitely be more opportunity for us to get down to a more granular level than what we've ever had before. And so I think there's opportunities there for us to refine some of those numbers as we go using that budget tool. And my hope is then we can get a bit closer to that bullseye, so to speak. In saying that, you know, a lot of our budgets are based on a lot of assumptions, whether it's provincial funding, federal funding. We don't, Mary Lou provide the example of the 1 year why the 2024 surplus was so high. We do our best based on the information we have at the time when we're drafting the budgets, and some things change. And sometimes we find that out even later in the year, the following year, in terms of actual funding amount. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I think I'm hopeful that through some of the budgeting tools that we'll be able to get closer to that bullseye.
Okay, thank you. Any other final questions for Director Spicer at this point in our agenda? Okay, not seeing any hands here in the room and nothing online. Nope. Okay, great. Well, thank you again. We do appreciate looking at every single avenue that is possible for this context of this particular year, and also making sure that we are learning from what we've done in the past, and that we're not shortchanging decisions that will need to be made in the future by focusing too far into this particular year on its own. It's good to see the continuity of the year. So good questions, good discussion. There's one more item that's going to happen. Thank you very much, Director Spicer. There is one more activity that is going to happen before we break for lunch. So I can just give a heads up to the transportation crowd that's in the room there. We're not going to be seeing you until after lunch. So just to give you that heads up, we'll come back with fresher minds and ready to take in your whole presentation, which is longer than other items. So with that, we are going to take 5 minutes with Manager Garrett Reid is going to provide us with a bit of a 5-minute demonstration of Open Book for council, but also for those following along in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is our new public-facing budget book. We're able to do a lot of different things with it and present information in a lot of different ways. This site, greycountyopenbook.questica.com, is unique to Grey County, and it's pulling information directly from Questica, our budgeting software. We have used it for budget and finance for the previous meetings, as well as providing them with capital updates. So it's not just for budget documents. We can provide other financial reports through Questica as well, as opposed to giving you PDFs of financial data. You can get them in different charts or data sets. So the cards we've given you for the 2026 budget deliberations, the first two I'm not going to go into, but they're the Grey County assessment and the reserves debt and financial position. These are information that previously we've had at the front of our budget book in the past. Useful information, but in the sake of my 5-minute timeline, I'm not going to go into them. The next one is our Capital Budget Explorer. And I want to thank Matt Wortman, Gordon Slater, and Sean Potter for their work on getting this data in here. This is an interactive map that shows our capital projects. As of right now, it is only our transportation projects that are included within here, as there's some limitations within the system about putting multiple projects on one specific location. So if I was doing all 20 projects that are budgeted at this building over the next 10 years, you would only see the top point because they would be exactly stacked on top of each other. But if a resident, I have an uncle who lives on Grey Road 18. If he is curious about when his road might get paved, he could scroll down to his road on the map. He lives about right here. Click on the purple line, which shows there's a capital project there. He'll get the description and the justification for the project, as well as when the project is expected, and then a pie chart detailing the funding sources. So the projects that aren't within transportation are still included. If you were to look for a project that's not, sorry, my mouse wire was hitting there. If you were looking for a project that's not in transportation, you would go up to this top search bar up here and search for whatever you were looking for. You can also filter by department if you're only looking at specific projects. So right now I have everything selected, but if I just wanted to look at paramedic services projects, I would click here, and it would give me a list of all of my capital projects in paramedic services and present the data in the same format map. And then once you go into a card, if you're looking to go back out, you just click on this little Grey County logo up here and it'll bring you back to the main page. The other tools are explorers. I will go into the Capital Budget Explorer, which is just a different way to present financial information to council and our residents. So if I'm looking at our capital budget, gross expenditures for 2026 are $115 million. But what does that mean? That it gives a pie chart of what departments or where those expenses live. Not surprising, the majority lives within human services, as this includes the Rockwood redevelopment project. But since transportation is going up first, I will drill down into them, and they're $47.6 million of capital projects. That is split out 8.3 million for facilities, which includes Patrol D, 3.7 for machinery, and 35 million for major roads construction. And if I want to drill down even further, I would click on that one more time, and it'll give me a breakdown of the projects that make up those gross expenditures. And we've done that for operating budgets as well as capital budgets. So there's two separate explorers. Then we have our capital budget. Oh, sorry, I clicked into the wrong one. Then we have our 10-year capital plan. This replaces the PDF that you had last year that was in excess of thousands of pages. And it's broken out by department. It provides a summary for each department as far as actual GL accounts that the expenditures are going to, and then a list of all of the projects over the next 10 years by gross expenditure. But if you wanted to pick any one of these projects, let's go to CAO 01 when we're doing our building assessment. I would just have to go down and click on the next tab, and it would provide me with the description, justification, and the actual revenue sources and expenditures for that project. Last one is the actual draft budget. We've done our best to try to set this up similar to the previous budget book that you guys have seen in the past. At the beginning, we have some qualitative information as well as the details around total budget numbers, summaries by departments. New this year, we've also added in tabs for the new staffing requests that were proposed at the September BFC, as well as level of service changes, which this year's Rockwood Terrace and Sue's already touched on. Then we get into our department by department summary. Again, since transportation is going first, I will go down to them. We have a cover page that provides the brief overview of the department and where they're sitting. And then each sub-department within that category has their own budget documents. So if I look at machinery and facilities, I have my narrative here. Then I will have my what was previously done with FRX, our financial statements. Then I'll have my financial statement for capital. And then I will have another listing of all of my gross expenditures for my capital projects over the next 10 years. Previously in the budget book, you would have went for human services, for example, all of the narrative for social services, then long-term care, then housing, then paramedics. And then you would have had approximately 100 pages of financial statements that tie to those that narrative that was up above. In this, it's now meant to read more like a book where you see the narrative for that specific department, and then the financials follow right after it. Acknowledging I've gone through this very fast, and the non-budget and finance committee members, this is their first time seeing it. If there's ever any questions about maneuvering or functionalities within the open book, feel free to reach out to myself, Sue, or Mary Lou at any time. Thank you.
Excellent. This has been a fantastic tool to explore as our budget committee has been starting to see the bits and pieces come together. It is so accessible for members of the community as well. It's wonderful. Thank you. So with that then, questions from any members in terms of that demo? And of course, you can feel free to ask individual questions to staff later if you think of it once you have a chance to play with it. But we wanted to make sure that the whole of the committee, the whole, had a chance to see it and see it in action as we have at the budget committee. Okay, I don't see any hands here in person nor online. Okay, so it looks like we are good. Thank you very much for that. And that will definitely fuel our discussion and our conversations to be able to drill down as far as you need to find the information that you're looking for. All right, so with that then we are going to break for lunch. And so if we could come back then at 1:30, we will be continuing with the presentations, and we will be beginning with transportation services, operating, and capital. So with that, we are adjourned until 1:30. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, Committee of the Whole members. We are ready to continue with our agenda today discussing budget. But to begin with, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask CEO Schertzer to come up and do a recap of everything that we've discussed in terms of the generalities from this morning before we go into the actual individual department presentation. So I suggest CA Schertzer at this point in time that you provide us with an overview. We digest it for information purposes because it's nothing new. It's just simply telling us where we are, where we would land if we go ahead with the things that we've discussed today so far in the morning, but we'll hold off discussion on it until we get to all the department presentations. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden, and good afternoon, Council. So as the warden indicated, we want to do a bit of a recap based on what we discussed this morning in terms of the staff recommendations to potentially look at further budget reduction opportunities, as well as the motion that was passed previously by council with respect to using when we came out of closed session. So just capture on the slides there, you can see in the screen the forestry revenue. Again, our tenders came in higher than what we anticipated as per the current draft budget. So that results in a 0.02% reduction if we were to capture what we've actually will get in terms of forestry revenue. The debenture payments, so this would be paying off our self-debentures using one-time funding. There was those 3 projects that we're currently self-debenturing. that would result in 1.05% reduction in 2026. The one-time funding reserve used for paramedic services, that motion was passed earlier. That results in a 0.28% reduction on the net levy. Social pinpoint, although that was deferred until the next meeting, again, the staff recommendation was to fund from reserve, or the one option may be to remove that entirely. Either way, that would result in a 0.04% reduction. So the total then with respect to that would be an overall net levy decrease in 2026 based on if all those recommendations were supported at some point by council, a total of just over 1.1 million reduction, which results in a 1.39% decrease. So again, based on the current draft budget where we're sitting before we started today, we were at 6.68%. If all those recommendations were approved by council, we'd be looking at 5.29% currently. As you can see on the from a 2027, we'd be at 6.56% again, if those staff recommendations were supported by council at some point. Any questions before I go into a couple options that, again, staff discussed over the lunch period because we were hearing some comments about interest maybe going below 5%. There's a couple options that staff discussed over the lunch period that were also discussed and mentioned at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and we would like to show those as well to council before Transportation Services starts their budget presentation.
Sorry, CO Schertzer, why don't you go ahead and move into the new information, because we have, that is just a recap. So there shouldn't be a lot of questions. People may have a question if once you introduce new information that could stir a new question.
Thank you, Warden, through you. So going to the next slide then. Thanks, Brittany. So one other potential option you'll see that identified just under the social pinpoint would be to phase in the cost for the road exchange. So as noted earlier, right now in the draft budget, we have 1.24 million that's identified in the 2026 budget. That's one of the main budget drivers that's driving up that increase, that percent increase. One option is to split phase that increase in. So the option that you see on the screen there would be 75% funded by levy in 2026, 25% one-time funding reserve, and the balance would then be picked up in 2027. So you'd be potentially deferring some of those costs into 2027. So as you can see, that results in a decrease in 2026 from what we were currently at before, if those staff recommendations were supported, which was at the 5.29, if you remember from the previous slide, that would get it down to 4.9% in 2026. But as you can see on the flip side, it increases it to 6.95% in 2027. So that's the challenge of potentially phasing in that, is that it reduces it in 2026, but we see an increase on the flip side in 2027. If you go to the next slide, this just further illustrates what another phase-in option would be for road exchange. So if it was 50% funded by levy in 2026 and 50% one-time funding reserve in 2026, that results in a 0.77% reduction in 2026. Again, with all the other potential opportunities to reduce the budget, you'd be at 4.51%. But as you can see, that increases it even further on 2027. We'd be projected at 7.34%. So again, we just wanted to present those because we discussed those during the lunch break as potential options for consideration. We were hearing from some of the councillors during that morning discussion that there was interest to look at it below 5%. We just wanted to present that as one potential option if that's what council will be looking to try to achieve. We'd be happy to take any questions with respect to that before we get into the Transportation Services Department budget.
Okay, so now let's put it out for any questions. We'll start with Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Warden. What is of the original budget of 5.3 or whatever that was, 3.1, is proportionate to the road exchange of that big part?
Through you, Warden, I'll turn it over to Mary Lou.
Thank you, Randy. So in the 2026 budget, it includes 1,240,000. So when you see the slide that is on the screen right now, the road exchange 50% being funded from levy, 15 from one-time funding of 620,000. That's half the 1.24 million. And then if you went to the previous slide and you were funding 25% of it, again, we're still using that number. So that 1,240,000 is 1.55%.
Okay, looking for any other questions? Okay, anything online? No. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Eccles.
So on the roads exchange, that's an annual payment that's going to be made from the levy?
That is